And welcome back to Creative Thinkers. My name is Miguel Valenzuela, and today, as always, we bring you a special guest. But today, it is one of our professors here at EPCC, Suzanne Ramirez. She is an assistant professor of government. Suzanne, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm super excited because we haven't known each other for a long time, but it turns out we have a lot of things in common. And one of the things that we do here at the show is we try to get to know the people that we interview a little bit more, kind of a little bit more in depth. One of the things that I want to ask you is, how was it that you actually got into teaching government?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because it's a long story, I'm sure,
yeah.
right?
Well, I think there's the first part, right, which I attended graduate school for public administration and studied a lot of administration and political science and international relations. And so, but that was, I suppose, the culmination of an interest that had started over my whole life, right, of learning about whether that was international events. I was always interested in what was happening beyond.
So you watched the news a lot?
Yeah,
or what?
watching the news. I was always interested in economic news. I wanted to know how things worked. I wanted to understand how laws got made, how decisions were being made that affected our lives, and that was always something interesting. But the bridge of getting from interest to actually pursuing a career, I think, was something that took years in the making.
Oh, absolutely.
You didn't really piece that together, right? When you're young, sometimes you don't piece together what you're interested in as to how that might actually translate into a career.
And that's one of the things that I find interesting, because I never wanted to go into teaching either, but it turned out that when I was kind of forced into teaching, I loved it. It was something that for me was unbelievably eye-opening, and I've stuck with it for 20 years now because I just am so enamored with what I do in reference to actually getting students to get excited about these things that we're teaching them. Because in essence, what we do is we get laymen, right? We get individuals who really don't know much about much in reference to what we're teaching them, and we try to solidify those things within them. And one of the things that I teach is art appreciation specifically, and I feel like you must teach one of the fundamentals in government. How do you feel when you get the students in there when they're like, why do I even need government? Like, why do I even need to be in this class?
Yeah. Well, if I could just rewind a second, you talked about teaching. I think my whole adult life, I've made a living somehow teaching. So for me, coming to teach government at EPCC, it was, for me, just, it felt like such a beautiful culmination of everything that I really feel passionate about doing. And I think that's something that I hope translates to my students, because I think, yes, the question is how do you get students to think, or to think about government beyond this being a course that I have to take, because it is a core course. And I think there's a reason why we have core courses, right? We consider this knowledge that is general and that is helpful no matter what career.
Oh, 100%, because one of the things that we try to do is we try to make well-rounded individuals, right? And it is a multifaceted element that we're trying to create through government, through language, through English, through what art, specifically in my particular case, but how is it that you take what these individuals are coming with, which is kind of a vast open area, and fill it with this information that helps them understand it in a better way?
Yeah, well, I mean, so we teach our core government courses, our federal government and the state government, and so we, in the classes, you'll touch on local government, what is happening here in the city, what is city council deciding on? You know, lately we've had elections at every level, right? Local, county, state, of course, presidential election catches the most, often the most attention.
Right.
And so I think it's when you're in class, you're relating what you're studying to how does that relate to our daily lives? What are the policies that affect us? I mean, obviously there's some pretty controversial topics, but also what are the laws around, you know, taxes, or how the things that affect us all on a daily basis. and the systems that we rely on. And so I think it's getting to think about, how does the world work in a way? Government is behind so many things. It impacts, everything that we do, from how we live to the way we work to the systems of support that we draw on, whether it's food, electricity, all of these things. So
absolutely.
Infrastructure, how we travel, and so I think when you get students to relate, right? And that's not just getting them to do something. I think it's in through the work of the class, right? It's if you can get students to be aware, if we can think about it, have discussions. And I always tell students, you have experience, you bring experience with you, you already know a lot. And so I think it's sometimes it's tapping into what experience and knowledge do students already have that they can reflect on and build on to keep learning about how do the courts work? How are laws made at the state and federal level? What is federalism? How does the relationship between the national government and the state government play out? How do we see we see that reflected in our lives? All of these things. I think it's something that you build upon, but I think it's also something that you become aware of and that you take with you, because if you're curious, then you will continue to follow the news. And I think that's one of the things, or engage with your community or local politics or whatever it is that you might want to engage more with. I think that's a lifelong thing.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that.
And if you can walk away with more interest, that's
and I think it'll make you, as I said earlier, a more well-rounded individual, right? And that's what we try to form here, because I believe that education is one of the most important facets of what we do as we, I guess, journey through our growth as individuals, right? And when we get these minds that are needing, longing for this knowledge, I think it's a very, very good thing. But one of the things that I try to focus on most in my class, obviously because it's art-oriented, is creativity. How do you incorporate that into your classes and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I think that can go, that's multifaceted, right? Because it's how do you teach a particular topic? How do you teach, if you're learning about federal bureaucracy or policy, how are you going to present that? How are you going to draw students into talking about something like income inequality or social programs? How do we make that interesting and relevant? So I think one is how you think about how you might present information. So how I might lecture, I think about that. How do you bring that alive in the classroom? But also, how do you help students to practice talking about it?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think, some of what we learn through our teaching education is how do you create interactive activities and engage students in discussion. And talking about government can feel very intimidating, I think, to some of us at any point, because it can feel like, what do I know about this subject? And
not just that, it feels overwhelming because it's so big, right?
Yes.
Like, how do you teach such a broad subject to somebody, right? And I think making that personal connection to each individual, like, am I going to be spending more on groceries because taxes are going up, for example? That's something that's very relevant to each individual student. For example, in my class, one of the things that I do is I try to allow them to understand that we all have this element of creativity by literally throwing them in to creating a work of art. They're like, oh, I wasn't in this class to create a work of art, but boom, there it is. Now we got to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And I find it very interesting because for me, politics is such a huge subject. But I also feel like there is a level of creativity within what politics is. Like politicians, for example, and we can talk about anyone in particular, but politicians have to approach what they do on a day-to-day basis from a very creative standpoint. How am I going to get my constituents to understand what I'm saying? How am I going to get them excited about what I'm thinking? I'm the leader here, right? What is your perspective on that? How do they do that and accomplish those things?
Right, because you have to be strategic, right?
Oh,
you have
for sure.
your constituency, and then you have all the people, whether it's Congress or the state legislature. You you are
Yes.
working on multiple levels, right, of people that you have to work in order to, say, pass a law, to get a
Yes.
bill passed,
Yes.
or how do you communicate that to your constituency?
Yes.
You're also thinking about re-election.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
What
There's
steps you're
what
going to
other
take?
stakeholders are involved.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
Do you think
yeah.
it takes a creative mind to get to that point?
absolutely, I think so.
In which way?
Yeah. Well, I think that you have to be able to put yourself in different shoes.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to think about if you are negotiating something, if you're trying to get a buy-in for something, if you're trying to, say, pass a bill or relate to your constituents, if you're trying to get reelected. And I'm not a politician, but I think you must need to put yourself and understand from different perspectives. Right? And how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
That could involve talking to people. It might involve study. It might involve imagination.
Mm-hmm.
It probably involves a good deal of thought and advice and talking to other people. And so even just right there, right, even just in me thinking about what might that entail, you draw from experiences that you have.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think in that sense, experience can also feed how you approach things and how you might incorporate maybe some creative strategies to accomplish
That's the
something.
word, I think. Yeah, creative strategies.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the fact that you learn and grow from experiences. You've had lots of great experiences. I want you to kind of touch upon a few things that helped you get to the place where you're at right now, because you've done a lot of journeys into different lands and things like that. How has that helped you become who you are? How have you succeeded by doing those things and taking those journeys?
I think it was willing to be okay with a little bit of risk and uncertainty. Yeah, and I did spend some time overseas, and that for me was so eye-opening. And I was in Europe. I wasn't, completely on the other end of the world.
Right.
But I did draw from those experiences because in any situation, I think we are creatures of context.
Oh, absolutely.
And so then who do you become in a different language, in a different culture, in a different place?
We must adapt.
And then you're learning about, obviously, politics or, what is the political economy in any place. So you are experiencing, again, your own interests and who you are. And you're also bringing your own previous experiences. So all of these things that sort of layer on each other. But I think being open was the big thing, right? Being open to having being open to having new experiences and to working, and maybe being a little bit uncomfortable when you're not really sure.
Yeah, that's true. How many times have people been uncomfortable in situations? I mean, I think everybody goes through those steps.
Yeah.
And that's one of the other things that I want to kind of have a conversation with you about. Both of us actually went to Catholic school when we were younger, and we kind of had similar experiences. Being in a private school, Catholic setting, all that is a wonderful thing. But just like you, when I got out, I felt like, wow, now I can really go out and do things, right? What am I going to do? Where is my first step going to be? How am I going to create this life for myself? Can you kind of walk us through what that experience was like and how it kind of allowed you to journey out in many ways?
Can I ask you a question first?
Yes,
when
please
did you
do.
finish your
Like
Catholic
what
school
year?
journey?
Like
well,
what year?
were you like coming out of 8th grade?
Oh, yes.
Going into high school or coming out of high school?
No. So I did all the way up to 8th grade in a Catholic school, and then I went on to a Catholic high school for a year.
You did, okay.
And then I was dying to get out of there. But not because of the Catholicism, because I wanted to go out and experience more things.
Yeah.
And I just felt that, and because when I was out of in first through 8th or kinder through 8th, I did so many things outside of school that when I went back, I was like, yeah, you know what? It's limiting to a certain degree, not in the sense that I don't want to learn this stuff, but in the sense that I feel like there's more out there. How can I experience these things? So yeah, mine was all the way up to freshman year.
Is that part of the reason it didn't go beyond freshman year? It's okay if that's too much of a question.
There's many other facets to that question and answers to that question. But in a nutshell, I wanted to get out because I felt like I had put in my time. And I could see what the outside world was like in reference to a public high school as opposed to a private high school. And I said, that's what I want, that's what I want, that's what I want.
You had an awareness there's something beyond this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, even in the uniforms, I felt like,
uniform.
Yeah, why do I have to wear a uniform? Okay, I've done it for many years. Now I got to do it all over again. Why can't I express my way of thinking, the way that I feel, and all of that? And I wasn't able to do that, and I just didn't feel comfortable. Not that it was a bad thing. Structure, I think, is good to a certain degree, but I didn't feel like I wanted to go on. And as soon as I got out, I was like, all right, let's take on the world. And I'm wondering if you had that same feeling.
That's interesting you bring up the uniforms, because I was thinking, on one hand, it can feel stifling. On one hand, you feel like your whatever form of self-expression might be manifested through what you're wearing, you don't have the opportunity. And on the other hand, I think at that age, that can also be difficult, right? So maybe there was, it also took away the guessing or the questioning of what am I going to wear? I hadn't thought about the uniform.
Oh my God, I thought about that all the time.
In a while, I have to say. So that's why I'm a little bit hung up on that right now, thinking about that.
But I think it all has to do with outside the box thinking, how you're going to take that outside the box thinking and kind of move it into other facets of who you are as an individual. And how does that help you grow?
Yeah, well, I think for me, that was the big struggle, that when I finally graduated, because for me it was done at 8th grade, and then I went on to public high school, and for me it just felt like the world was, I think, hungry for a bigger world. I needed, I think, opportunities in a small school. Because of the nature of it being a small school, you might only have so many opportunities to do different things.
True.
Because obviously there's limits to there's limitations there. So I think for me that was the really exciting thing. Was in particular, I was interested in theater. I was dancing and I was interested in theater at the time, and there were opportunities to do that at school, and that was for me really exciting.
But you mentioned that you wanted to get into theater, and theater is a very creative, I guess, class that you could take, right? Why was it that you wanted to be that creative? Why didn't you just go into like a government class, for example?
Well, and I was certainly, I think doing those classes because I was interested. I certainly, I think even then was interested in the academic part, but I was really elated to have these opportunities to do these more artistic things that I hadn't really gotten to explore before. So I was very curious, and I think in being drawn to those, I started to do them, and that's when you, I think, start to discover as a young person, gosh, you start to discover who you are. You start to discover what you like. You start to question what the world is like, and you also meet people through these things. So there was the social aspect too.
Right.
So I remember that being something that was interesting, was the people that I met that became friends, and you have this similar interest. So there's a social connection there too.
Right.
And it was fun, and just getting to explore and learn, right? Whether it was plays or pieces, you're getting exposed to things, and your mind, right? It's stimulating you in different ways, and maybe you're very young, right? When you're 14, 15, you're just sort of, for me, it was exploring and learning, but it was clear, right? It's very clear, I think, what you're interested in. It was clear I was very strongly attracted to the world of dance and theater from a young age.
And then talking about dance, you did theater for a little while, but you did dance, and you also did a Pilates thing for a while. How does
later,
how does that help you or mold you into who you are today? I feel like you are a very outside the box thinker. You're not the person that's kind of very a straight edge or stifled in any way, and that's one of the things that kind of attracted me to you, as in reference to wanting to talk to you. And how does that kind of upbringing and those experiences help get you into who you are today?
That I would end up teaching in the context that I am now. I didn't know how to imagine that back then, because my journey has certainly not been a linear one. I kind of consider myself a late bloomer in some ways. And I think
but it's never too late.
I just needed to explore different things. Yes, I pursued the dance dream in my 20s. That was just, I was going to school, but I was also so compelled toward the movement world. I just was in love with it since I was young. Did you kind of need to get it out of your system or something? If that's the case, I still haven't.
Okay, good.
Because that's
good.
not something I don't know if I see it as getting out of my system or something that's just a part of who I am. For me, that element of movement, and I think that's also tied to health. I was always interested in wellness, and so for me, it started with dancing. The music, there's the theatrical aspect to dance as well. So I always loved that, and challenging yourself on a physical level.
Oh, okay, right.
There's that. You're never going to master it. You're always working towards something.
And then not just that, there's different dances that one can approach, right? It's not like you can just do ballet. You can also do jazz. You can also do the more classical dancing. You know.
And I started with ballet folklorico when I was.
Really? Okay.
When I was young, that was the first type of dancing that I did. And then later on, I tried different things and pursued the ballet dream for a while. And you mentioned Pilates. That was sort of adjacent, because as I was teaching, that was something you often had, like Pilates studios that were attached to ballet studios, and so that was a part of my life. For a long time. I taught.
But one of the things that we try to focus on here on Creative Thinkers is the creative aspect. And for me, one of the most important things that I can do with my students is try to open their kind of mind and their way of thinking in reference to what creativity is. In your opinion, what is creativity to you?
Well, we were just talking about movement. So I think that when you pursue the things that you do, or the things that call you, a lot for me is a lot of that is strongly involved in movement. But I think when you follow that call of the things that appeal to you, whether it's travel, language, writing, theater, all of those things that we consider sort of more artistic avenues, gosh, like how much does that feed who you are? Because I don't feel like I feel like that's the part of me that does those things is the part of me that's also the government instructor, right?
That's what I'm trying to get at. That's exactly right.
I think when you allow yourself to pursue those things, you feel like more of you're the whole person that you're meant to be, right? We are multifaceted beings. And so I think to the extent we can really incorporate all those pieces of ourselves, because we draw from them.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because travel for me is extremely important. We need to get out and experience things, do things, see things, and we cannot fully understand what's happening unless we literally go out there and see. And I know that you said that you went out into Europe for a while. I myself went into Europe and China.
Adventures.
And, lots of adventures. And I feel like that's what's allowed me to grow into who I am as an individual. And because of that, I am who I am. And when I teach my students, one of the other things that I try to help them understand is the connection that we all have to this thing called creativity and art. And I try to do that by showing them examples. And one of the best examples that I have come up with in recent times, probably in the last year, is what do all of us aspire to do in our lives? Most of us aspire to travel. We will work almost all of our lives to be able to go, let's say, to Paris, France, because that's where most people go, to Paris, France. And what are we going to go to Paris, France to do? We're literally going to go to Paris, France to look at artwork. Yet most people don't understand the importance of what this thing called art and creativity is. Then why in the world do we spend most of our life working to get to go see that thing? Just like in government, just like in art, just like in history, just like in science and math, if we start to build something with this kind of fundamental understanding that it's important, then we can help the students learn, which is one of our most important things that we do here at EPCC, is actually teach. And tell us one thing about how much you love teaching.
It's
a deep question.
I'm thinking about it because for me, again, that's also something that feels multifaceted. But it's so rewarding to see students grow, to see them apply themselves. And I think that when you can relate to them and they can relate to you, I think that there's a connection there.
Oh, rapport, for sure.
And I think that goes a long way. I think education is more than what we take away from any one particular class, because how do you think about, many of our students are thinking about, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And that's a really difficult thing to face when you're young and you're not really sure, because maybe you haven't had that many experiences yet.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is.
What you were saying about how your experiences have made you who you are, you model that for your students. You model where you've been and what you've done, and you are this sort of, well-rounded, happy human being. And I think that's also something important, because you're modeling for your students something, right? That they can have that sense of, I can learn things, I can grow, I can try things, and feedback, I think, is important, right? Whether it's writing or discussions about politics and government, it's something we can improve at.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that also, the creativity there is, how do I improve? How do I keep growing, right? Because creativity is to change.
Absolutely.
And so having that sort of growth, that mindset that I can grow, I can learn, I can try new things, and maybe it's not always going to come out great, but I can try again, or I can change course.
And it's a beautiful thing for the students to actually learn all of these things in this show, because we have just a beautiful conversation. Time runs out very quickly.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank you for taking the time out to come in and talk to us, learning a little bit about you, and I hope you had a good time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure. And I want to thank you guys for coming in and watching us. As always, again, my name is Miguel Valenzuela, and you guys are watching Creative Thinkers. If you guys want to contact me, you guys can contact me at mvalen31@epcc.edu, or if you guys want to watch our show, you guys can go to YouTube. Please join us next time. Thank you very much.